It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 31, looking at the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Mozambique. Part 2, the selection. Here we go! Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is a continuation of Series 31 on the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode is part 2 of our coverage of Mozambique's players. The final roster is released and we're looking at the selections of Mozambique. In part 1, we compiled a list of players and their likelihood of reaching the final squad. That was based mostly on their participation from after the 2023 African Cup, so that would be March 2024, up until the October 2025 games or the end of World Cup qualifying there. We considered a few other factors in placing the players as well, and we also gave some biographical and career information on the main players to help you to get to know them better. In part 2 here, our focus is on the selections, especially the final selections. Before we move on, we want to let you know that in the springtime of 2026, probably April, we will start producing episodes for the 2026 World Cup, which of course takes place in the summer of 2026. So keep an eye out for that, or better yet, subscribe to the channel and it'll notify you when the episodes come out. Okay, this mediacast is divided into 3 sections, just like part 1. Section 1 focuses on team information there. Section 2 is the main part of the mediacast. We review the list that we compiled in part 1, and we'll tell you who made the preliminary and final squad. We'll also try to predict the starters. We did take steps towards that in part 1. By providing a narrative of each position over the period. We'll summarize that by letting you know who we thought the starters would be. We didn't actually talk about that in part 1, but we did make notes on it. So it'll be our starting point for part 2, and then we will examine the lineups in games played after October 2025 to see if they give any further clues as to who will start. And finally, we'll revise our predictions on the starters. In section 3, we will do our spotlight review. That is a race through the squad, covering the main players who made it and didn't make the squad and our predicted starters. We'll also review surprise selections and non-selections for Mozambique, as well as any new players making the final squad. And finally, we will update on injuries. Let's jump right in to section 1 then, some team information. In part 1, we looked at club affiliations of players, the games they played over the recent period, and the preferred formations of Mozambique. Here we're focusing on what the team published. Teams were required to submit a preliminary roster of up to 55 players to CAF, the organizers of the tournament, kind of Africa's version of FIFA. For the 2023 African Cup, CAF actually published those lists, making it easy for me. However, some teams didn't like that. They felt it had some negative effects. So this time it was up to the teams as to whether they published or not. I actually used Google's AI, Gemini, to get the 55-man roster. But in the process of doing so, I became a bit doubtful about its sourcing and accuracy. However, that was really just in a few of the minor details. And overall, I think the rosters are fairly accurate. At the risk of a few mistakes there, we are going to use the information here. The final rosters, on the other hand, are very accurate. So teams were allowed to bring 28 teams to the tournament. Mozambique just produced a 25-player squad, actually a bit more complex than that, but 25 players coming to Morocco for them. Just getting my graphics happening here. Okay. However, they did have 3 players on a standby squad. Those players did not come to Morocco, but are ready to join them at a moment's notice. Probably to cover an injury would be the most likely scenario. Those 28 players came from the 55-man preliminary squad, so they had to cut almost half the players, 27 of them there. Before we move on to section 2 and see who those players were, we're going to take a look at the games played by Mozambique after October 2025. So like most African teams, they had a couple of friendlies in November. Their first one was on November 14th in Morocco, and it was against Morocco. They lost 1-0 there. Their next game on November 17th, 3 days later, also in Morocco, that was a 2-2 draw with Chad. We do have the lineups for those games. Mozambique was one of the few teams that played a pre-tournament warm-up friendly. They played against Angola on December 17th, lost that game 4-1. We're not so much interested in the scores, though. We're interested in the lineups. So as I said, we do have the lineups for the November games. Couldn't find the lineup anywhere for the Angola game, which is unfortunate because, it might have given us good insight into the final squad. So really, we're not able to use that game. We just have the 2 November games to go on. All right, that's all we have to do in section 1. So let's move on to section 2, the main part of the media cast here. Or look at the candidates. Let's see who made it and who didn't. So we begin with the manager here, Chiquino Conde. In part 1, we used the opportunity to talk about the team's successes and failures over the past 4 or 5 years and the managers in charge of those successes and failures. We won't repeat all that here. We'll just say Chiquino Conde has been in charge of the team since 2021 there, so pretty long-term manager as far as it goes, and Chiquino Conde will guide them through the tournament. So we'll highlight him in green to indicate that he was effectively a successful selection for the squad. All right, let's move on to goalkeepers. And we had 2 definite candidates here, Iman Silouane there, and Ivane Urubal, both of those selected for the final squad. No candidates at the likely level, but we have a possible candidate, Kimis, sometimes called Kimis Zavala, and he too was selected for the squad. We had a player at the seemingly off the squad level, Fazito. He made the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. We also have 3 new candidates to add to the list that came on the preliminary squad. None of them making the final cut, just the preliminary squad there. The first one, Teixeira Nanombe, there. The second one, Jose Guirugo, and the third one, Armando Dutor. And yes, as I say, none of them making the preliminary squad. So that is the list of candidates. Let's go back and see if we can predict the starters. There, at the end of part 1, we had Hernan Silouane as a likely starter and Ivane Urubal as a possible starter there. Iman Silouane had missed only 3 of their games over the period, and Urubal had replaced him in all of those 3 games. Well, let's look at the November games to see if they influence our opinion. And we have the first game, Silouane starting the first of the November friendlies, but a bit of a surprise. Rather than Urubal starting the second, as we might expect, it actually is Kimis starting the second one. So perhaps that does change our opinion a little bit in terms of who the backup keeper is going to be. But we still think Silouane is a likely candidate. I would say close to definite, but we're a bit conservative, so keeping it at the likely level for Silouane. And we give 1 star to each of the others now as possible starters. Ivane Urubal. I may have been saying that wrong. It's Ivane Urubal. And Kimis. both of those possible starters. Okay, that is it for goalkeepers. Let's move on to defenders and central defenders specifically. And we have no candidates at the definite level, actually, but at the likely level we have Mesher. It's Mexer. I think I used to say Mexer, but the announcer in 2023 pronounced it more like Mesha. He was selected for the final squad. So was our other likely candidate, Fernando Chamboko. We had two possible candidates on the list in part one, and Edmilson Dove, the first of those, was selected for the final squad. But the second one, Francisco Chico Muchanga, not selected for the final squad, just the preliminary squad for him. Two candidates at the seemingly off the squad level. The first one, David Malambana, not even selected for the preliminary squad there. But the second one, Martinho, at least made it to the preliminary squad. No new candidates to add here. So that is pretty thin, three central defenders. But we are actually going to move. We should have done this in part one, really. Moved Reynaldo Mandava up here. I would say he's a definite candidate. What did we? Yeah, we had him as a definite candidate. He's a left back, really. For his clubs, he plays left back. For Mozambique, though, over this recent period, he's been playing in central defence. An important part of that central defence. So I think he does belong here as far as Mozambique goes. Let's look and see what the situation was. Reynaldo Mandava playing in central defence. Sorry, I was reading the wrong part there. Actually, what we had at the end of part one was Mesher and Mandava as definite candidates. We still think it's possible Mandava may play on the left or even on the right. Actually, more likely on the right if he does move. So definite starter. But given how thin the central defence is, they'll probably use him back here. And we did have as possible starters Edmilson Dove and Fernando Chamboko. In fact, we did well to put Dove and Chamboko as possible starters on the list. We were a bit hesitant to do that because neither had started any of the fall 2025 games in September and October. But when we look at the November games, each of them started both of the friendlies. It was a three-man central defence with Chamboko and Dove alongside Mesher in the middle. Reynaldo was not available for those games, not called up. We're not sure. We don't think he was snubbed or anything, just maybe unavailable for those games. So we're thinking it could perhaps go back to Mesher and Reynaldo as a starting pair if they use a two-man central defence. But perhaps they are looking at a three-man defence, in which case Reynaldo would probably play a more attacking role. And again, we think probably more likely on the right than on the left, which he has done. All right, let's distribute our stars then. Well, we think both Reynaldo and Mandava, Reynaldo Mandava and Mesher are definite starters there. And we think Dove and Chamboko are possible starters, I guess, if there's a chance that they use a three-man central defence there. Okay, let's move on to left backs. This is where we had Reynaldo Mandava. We should have had him at the top of the list because he's one of their biggest players. But we have him alongside Bruno Langa, also a definite candidate. Both of those selected for the final squad. And I think I'm just going to remove Mandava from the list here because he really didn't play as a left back for Mozambique. And we've dealt with him as a central defender. So Bruno Langa there, no likely or possible candidates. Just the next one was at the possible but unlikely level. That was Danilo Moos. and he was not selected even for the preliminary squad there. No new candidates introduced here, so probably Mandava is the backup for this position, but we just have Bruno Langa there. And that's really all we needed over the period. We have him as a definite starter because he started 14 of the 15 games in this position. Let's see if the November games change our mind. Ronaldo Mandava, again, was not available. Bruno Langa consistently throughout the period, and that continued into both November friendlies. But since it was a 3-4-3 formation, he pushed up to the left wing in both of those games. So we're going to give 3 stars to Bruno Langa as the starter. We think that is a definite there. Okay, over to the right backs. And we have a definite candidate in Infran Matola, more commonly known as Nanani, and he was selected for the final squad. And then we had 2 candidates at the possible level, Diogo Kalila and Domingos Mancanza. Kalila was selected for the final squad. Mancanza had been, Yes, Kalila selected for the final squad. Mancanza had kind of been drifting off the squad, so we're not really surprised that he only made the preliminary squad there. And we had a possible but unlikely candidate in Oscar Shireen. He was selected for the final squad, so that's a bit of a surprise there. So 3 right backs, maybe one of them will provide cover on the left, and I see I've made a mistake in my graphics, so let me just replace Diogo Kalila there. Okay, let's take a look at our predictions. We had Diogo Kalila as a likely starter and Nanani as a possible starter. Let me tell you what happened over the period. Nanani increasingly took over the position from Domingos Mancanza in 2024, the first half of the period. And then in 2025, Diogo Kalila increasingly took over the position ahead of Nanani. But at the end of part 1, we thought that still may be under contention. But Kalila did start, I think he started 3 of the 4 games in fall 2024. The 2 of them shared the 2 November friendlies. Kalila started the first of those and Nanani the second. And so we stick with what we had. Likely starters Kalila and possible starters Nanani. However, if they do go with a 3-man defense, we think it's actually a bit more likely that Reinildo Mandava could start on this side rather than on the left side. Which he's coded as. So we're going to give 2 stars here to Diogo Kalili as the likely starter. We're going to give 1 star to Nanani as a possible starter. And, we won't give the star here to Ronaldo Mandava. That's pretty speculative of us as well. So we don't really want to really put our name behind it. It's just speculation. Okay, let's move on upfield to the defensive midfielders. And we begin with a definite candidate in Nene. He's actually coded as a central defender. But he played defensive midfielder throughout the period. So I suppose he could offer cover in central defence if needed. Anyway, Nene was selected for the squad, as was our likely candidate, Guima, also selected. Next on our list, actually I'm seeing that we made a mistake in part 1. We should have 4 possible candidates there. But it looks like we put them in the seemingly off the squad level. So I just need to move them and then we can discuss them. Okay, so the first of the 4 possible candidates, Amadou, not making the final cut there, just the preliminary squad. The second one, though, Manuel Kambala, did make the final squad. The third one, Shaquille, is the first of our 3 standby players on the squad, and he did not travel then to Morocco with the team, but will be on alert to be called in if he's needed. So we're going to highlight him in brown there. And then the other possible candidate, the fourth one, Keenis Abdallah, was selected for the final squad. So already we have 4 candidates here. We had one candidate at the possible but unlikely level, Ali Abudo. Ali Abudo just making the preliminary squad there. And we have one to add, but he too just made the preliminary squad. It is Ezequiel, and Ezequiel just 22 years old, so we may see him in the future. We're going to do central midfielders before we talk about our predictions. And we really only have one to deal with here, just one at the definite level, and it's Alphonse Amade, who was selected for the final squad. So that gives us 5 central midfielders, defensive/central midfielders. I'll run through the names again. We have Nene, Guima, Manuel Kambala, Keenis Abdallah, and Alphonse Amade. Let's talk about the position. Oh no, we have a central midfielder to add, a new candidate there. So that is Sampaio is the nickname he goes by. His actual name is Sapani Fabio Zunguze. That's quite a mouthful. But the announcers won't have to get used to it because he only made the preliminary squad. Okay, that is truly it. Now we can look at the situation and the starters. At the end of part 1, we had likely starters Guima and Alphonse Amade, and then possible starter Nene there. In the November games, Guima and Amade did start as a pair in both games. So we are tempted to move them to definite. But again, we're quite conservative. I'm not that confident. We'll give them 2 stars, but really it's more like 2.5, close to definite. So likely candidate Guima and Alphonse Amade. That looks like the 2-man starting midfield there. Okay, let's go on upfield. We have no left and right midfielders to deal with, so we can go straight to the attacking end of the field and look at the left attackers. Here we have a definite candidate in Gildo Valancoulos. He's actually coded as a right attacking midfielder, but he's been playing over on this side. He was a definite candidate, and he was selected for the final squad. I should say he starts mostly on this side because he does pop up on the right sometimes. The second candidate is Wheaty, or Wheatiness Quembo is his actual name. He goes by Wheaty, and he was selected for the final squad. The second likely candidate, though, is the second of the standby players, Clesio Bork, just making the standby squad there. And we have no new candidates over here. So let's talk about the starters. And at the end of part 1, we had Gildo and Wheaty kind of tied as possible starters there. Actually, those two, Wheaty and Gildo, along with Clesio Bork, did rotate fairly evenly over the period, but Bork had started a little bit towards the end, and we're not really surprised that he named to a standby role here. In the fall of 2025, Wheaty started the first 3 of those games, and Gildo started the last one. However, neither of them started in the November friendlies. It was actually the forward, Faisal Bangal, starting the first game, and then the right attacking midfielder Jenny Katamo starting the second. However, we're not going to make any predictions based on that. We're just going to stick with what we have here with Gildo and Wheaty as possible starters both. So we'll put 1 star beside each of their names, recognizing that there could be a bit of a shake-up in the expectations once we get to the Cup. But we would have no idea really if they did make a shake-up there. Let's go to the right attackers, right attacking midfielders. We have a definite candidate in Jenny Katomo. He's kind of their star. He and Reynaldo. He was selected for the final squad. And at the possible level, we have Angelo Thomas Cantolo. Cantolo is the third of our 3 standby players there. So didn't quite make the final squad, but could be called in. We had 2 possible but unlikely candidates there. The first one is Dario Chongai. And Dario Chongai not selected even for the preliminary squad there. The second one, Jonathan Miomo, did make the preliminary squad though. And then we had 1 player seemingly off the squad, Tellino, and he also made the preliminary squad. Let's just see if we have any new candidates here. I'm delaying a little because my computer is moving slowly. We do actually have four candidates new on the preliminary squad, and none of them making the final cut though, so we'll go through the names. This is not a bad opportunity to say though that by new candidates we mean that they were not on our list for part 1. That's because they didn't appear in 2024 or 2025. However, Luis Miquissone was in our soccer files because he had been with the team since 2015. So we kind of dragged him up from the files to put his name here. The other 3, though, are new to the squad. The first one, Thomas Mahumane or Mahumane. The second one, Almedo Botao, nicknamed Fortino. And the third one, Naftal Titos. So all 4 of those players making the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. So really, we just have Jenny Katamo left standing here among many candidates that we've looked at. And we have Jenny Katamo as the likely starter over here. Again, we're being a bit conservative because it's almost definite. But we do see that Gildo Valancoulos does start over here once in a while there. So we have him as a possible starter. In the recent games, the friendly games, Jenny Katamo did start on the right in the first game. In the second game, we saw him starting on the left. And they handed the start on the right to Pepo Santos. He's an attacking midfielder who we're going to meet right away. But we are going to see that Pepo Santos is out injured. So whatever plans they were experimenting with come to nothing because Santos is not available. So we are going to put Jenny Cantos as the likely starter, almost definite there. And we think it's possible that Gildo Valancoulos will start, so we'll move him over here. He was a definite candidate to make the squad. We'll give him 1 star over here. So 1 star on each side for Gildo adds up to us thinking that he's a likely starter. I would put that at about 1.5, really, because he only started 6 of their 18 games. 6 of their 15 games over the period, but I'm not altogether against considering him a likely candidate. Okay, that is it for right attackers then. Let's move on over to central attackers. Here's where we meet Pepo Santos. He was a likely candidate, but not selected even for the preliminary squad. And we will cover it in section 3, but I might as well say here that he was ruled out due to a serious knee injury that he picked up at the end of November, an ACL tear. And that was just before the squad was announced, so they immediately knew that it was serious enough that he wouldn't be able to play in the Cup. In fact, he's going to be out until the springtime of 2026. So very unfortunate there, a big loss because Pepe was coming into the team more. Beyond him, then, we have João Bonde. João Bonde, a possible level player, and he was selected for the final squad. At the possible but unlikely level, we had Domingos Palembe. He is now 42 years old, but he hadn't played in 2025, so that's why we had him at the possible but unlikely candidate. Whether Pepo Santos's injury was the reason he was called back in is something we can speculate on, but it may be just for his. Actually, there is a bit of a story behind that. I noted actually in part one that the reason for his non-selection, this is Dominguez Palembe, was because the 41-year-old was moving into retirement. But it turns out he was left off the squad in 2025 for disciplinary reasons. He had failed to submit his passport on time for a game to be played in Egypt. In November, the three vice captains, Mesher, Reinaldo, and Edmilson Dove, met with the manager and persuaded him that Dominguez's leadership was important for the club. So he was reinstated for the November friendlies and selected for the squad. The first of their friendlies there in November was played just a day after his 42nd birthday. So an interesting little story behind Palembe there, and would have been on the squad even if Pepo Santos had been available there. So those are our central attackers. Let's look at the situation for starters. We had Pepo Santos as a likely starter, and that was it. We didn't think Domingos Palembe would be on the squad, to be honest. Pepo Santos was a big loss for Mozambique as he was becoming a more important player for them. They did use this position quite a bit in a 4-2-3-1 formation, and Pepo was moving into the role more and more. So in his absence, we're wondering if they're going to use the formation, the 4-2-3-1, because Palembe had been off the team and seems too old to be a starter. The possible candidate, João Bonde, is not a starter either. Anyway, perhaps one of those will start, or perhaps they will change their formation and not use the position. I suppose the other possibility is using an out-of-position player like one of the left or right attacking midfielders. So we're going to kind of break our rules and put 4 stars here. 1 star for João Bonde, 1 star for Domingos Palembe. We consider Palembe slightly more likely there. But we are going to put 1 star for the position not being used, a change in formation, and 1 star for an out-of-position player being used. Wow, talk about hedging our bets, eh? All right, that's it for the attacking midfield. We're moving on to forwards now. We don't have any secondary strikers to consider, so straight to centre forwards, and we have a definite candidate in Stanley Retiefo. Stanley Retiefo was selected for the final squad. No candidates at the likely level, but 2 at the possible level, and both of them making the squad. The first one is Faisal Bangal, and the second one is Melki, or Melki Alexandra. Both of those selected for the final squad then. 2 candidates at the possible but unlikely, but both of them only making the preliminary squad. The first one, Antonio Deo, and the second one, Makamo Elias. I'm reversing those names, but it shouldn't be. It should be Deo Antonio and Elias Macamo. Both of those just making the preliminary squad. And we had Lau King seemingly off the squad. He did make the preliminary squad though, but not the final cut. And here we have several new candidates, and in fact, our first candidates new on the preliminary roster who actually made the final cut. So the first of these two is Chamito Alfandega, and the second one is oh no, I have Chamito Alfandega twice, so it's just him. We're going to come back and introduce him because we said we would do that to unlikely players or new players making the final squad. Let me first introduce the three players who didn't make it, though, just on the preliminary squad. The first one is Alcido David, apparently goes by the nickname Alcidas. The second one is Antonio Sumbane, and the third one, Ivan Mario. All three of those players just making the preliminary squad. Let me introduce then Chamito Alfandega. He got his first cap in the November friendlies there. He didn't start either the first game, but he was subbed in for one and on the bench for the other. So that gives him one cap since 2025, and he is 21 years old, and he plays for Black Bulls Maputo, probably the biggest team in Mozambique there, but he actually was loaned out to a team in Portugal, Académico Visu, their B team, since 2025. So he's developing as a player and maybe will get his feet on the field, probably as a substitute, if at all, in this tournament. Okay, that is our look at forwards. Let's no, it isn't. We gotta talk about our predictions. Well, here we predict Stanley Rafito as the definite starter, or at least we did at the end of part one. Let's see if the November games changed our opinion. It was actually Dominguez Palembe starting the first November friendly, while Retifo started the second. So that really doesn't shake our confidence. We don't think Palembe will be a starter. So we're going to spend all of our 3 stars backing Stanley Retifo as the starter there. All right, that's our prediction. And that does bring us to the end of the of section 2, the forwards. And we move on to section 3. In section 3, we want to welcome listeners to the short version of the mediacast here. And we begin with our spotlight review, a race through the squad, reviewing what we've covered. Well, what we've covered really in both parts of the mediacast. So in part 1, we compiled the list and placed players according to their likelihood of making the squad. And then in part 2, we told you who did make the squad and who didn't, and we also predicted our starters. So that's what we'll be covering in our spotlight review here, a motorcycle ride through the team. We begin with manager Chiquinho Conde, and well, we'll say he was selected for the final squad in that he wasn't let go or anything before the tournament. Goalkeepers, we had 2 definite candidates, Hernan Siluane and Yvain Urubal, both of those selected for the final squad, as was our possible candidate Kimis Zavala. Those are the 3 goalkeepers coming to the cup. We're not going to talk about candidates below the level of possible unless they were selected for the final squad. In this case, they were not. So we have our 3 goalkeepers. We think Siluane is a likely starter there, and Urubal and Kimis, both possible starters. We still favor Urubal a little bit as the backup keeper there. Moving on to defenders, in central defense, we have Reynildo Mandava, actually a left back, but playing centre back for Mozambique over the past 2 years. Reynildo Mandava selected for the final squad. The 2 likely candidates, Mesher or Mexer, I think it's pronounced Mesher, was selected, as was the other one, Fernando Chamboko, both of those making the final cut. And the first of our two possible candidates, Edmilson Dove, making the final cut. But the second one, Francisco Chico Muchanga, just making the preliminary squad there. In terms of starters, we do think it could be a three-man back line. If it's a two-man back line, we're pretty definite that it would be Reynaldo and Mesher there. But in the November friendlies, they used a three-man back line. And so in that case, we think it's possible that Chamboko and Dove could be starters there. Okay, over to left backs. We only had one candidate here making the squad. He was Bruno Alanga. We had him at the definite level, and we consider him a definite starter on the left side. Over to the right side, we have Infran Mantola, better known as Nanani, a definite candidate who was selected for the final squad. Two possible candidates here, Diogo Kalila, who did make the final cut, but the other one did not. Domingos Mancanza just making the preliminary squad there. However, our possible but unlikely candidate, Oscar Chirin, was selected for the final squad, so a bit of a surprise there. In terms of starters, we think Diogo Kalila is the likely starter and Nanani a possible starter there. Upfield we go to defensive midfielders, and we had a definite candidate in Nene, actually coded as a centre back, and perhaps will cover centre back position if need be. He was a definite candidate and was selected. Our likely candidate, Guima, also selected. And then we had four candidates at the possible level. The first of these, Amadou, just made the preliminary squad. But two of them, Manuel Kambala and Keynes Abdallah, did make the final cut. The other one, Shakil, didn't quite make the final cut. He's one of the three players on the standby roster. That means he doesn't travel to Morocco, but he is available to be called in if they need him. Before we do the predictions, we'll do the central midfielders first. Actually, we just have the one candidate here, Alphonse Amade, who was selected for the final squad. We had him at the definite level. In terms of starters, we put Guima and Alphonse Amade as likely starters, but we actually are a bit more confident than that, but not quite to the point of naming them as definite starters, but likely there. Upfield we go to the left attacking midfield, and here we have a definite candidate in Gildo Vilanculas. He's actually coded as a right attacking midfielder, but has been playing here more during the period. And we have Gildo Vilanculas was selected for the final squad. We had two candidates at the likely level. The first one, Witty, or Wittiness Quembo, was selected for the final squad. The second one, Clesio Bog, is the second of our standby players there, so not quite making the final cut there. In terms of starters, we're not sure, so we put Gildo and Witty both as possible starters over here, but we're also going to put Gildo as a possible starter on the right side because he does play some games there. That's what we're moving over to now. We just had the one candidate here, Jenny Katamo. He was at the definite level and he was selected for the final squad. Our possible candidate, Angelo Thomas Cantolo, is the third of our standby players, so not quite making the final cut there. And in terms of starters over here, we consider Jenny Katamo a likely starter on this side. but a definite starter overall, actually. It would be madness if they didn't start him. We do put Gildo as a possible starter over here as well. Okay, on to central attackers. They got some bad news here. The likely candidate, Pepo Santos, picked up a late injury and was not available for selection. Wasn't even put on the preliminary squad as a result of that. Our possible candidate, João Bonde, was selected for the final squad, and our possible but unlikely candidate, the veteran Domingos Palembe, in an interesting story we told in section 2, ultimately selected for the final squad there. In terms of predictions for this position, we're not really sure. Actually, with Pepo Santos gone, we think they might not even use the position because the backup players don't really seem like starters. So we're going to put 1 star on the position not being used, so that's possible. 1 star on an out of position player playing it. Probably one of the left or right attacking midfielders, maybe a forward. And then we give 1 star possible starters, João Bonde or Domingos Palembe. We consider Palembe more likely between the two of those. On we go to the forwards, and we have a definite candidate in Stanley Retifo. He was selected for the final squad. Both of the possible candidates on our list also selected, Faisal Bangal and Melky Alexander. Both of those selected for the final squad. And here we have the only new candidate on the list coming in off the preliminary squad. It is Chamito Alfandega, making his start with the club there in November. In terms of predictions here, we have Stanley Retifo as a definite starter. Okay, that brings us to the end of our Spotlight review. Let's continue on with a couple of other pieces of business in section 3 here. And the first part is surprises. Any notable surprises? Well, we have notable non-selections. We would say Pepo Santos there, a notable non-selection. That is due to injury, so we'll talk about that more in the injury section. Surprise inclusions, just the one, Oscar Shireen, the right back, had been at the possible but unlikely level for us there, but was selected to the final squad ahead of a player that we actually thought more likely than him. So that was a bit unexpected. And then for new players, we just have one as well, and it is the forward Chamito Alfandega. A bit of excitement there. He's just 21 years old. And that's the only player from the preliminary squad that was added to the list from part 1, the only player we didn't have covered in part 1 there. Okay, we're moving on to injuries here. We look at the previous injury list at the end of part 1, and it was clean. Mozambique had no injury concerns. However, over the course between the time of doing part 1 and this time, we had Pepo Santos getting, excuse me, sorry, my throat's getting dry. I had to cough there. We had Pepo Santos getting injured in his club play, ruled out with a serious knee injury, an ACL tear, suffered in late November. That was just before the squad was announced, so they knew not to put him on the preliminary squad, and that injury generally takes several months to recover from. So big loss there in Pepo Santos. He was coming into the team more and more. In fact, we had him as a likely candidate to make the squad. So we're going to move Pepo Santos here into the dropped due to injury category there. Okay, that is it. Not many closing thoughts. I mean, Mozambique is one of those small, tight squads, and their strength comes from the players playing together a lot. It's generally the same players on the field all the time, so they're very familiar with each other, and that's why losing someone like Pepo Santos is a blow to them, because it kind of disrupts the flow that they've built. Okay, that's it. The closing thoughts, pretty short there. We're going to move to our closing graphic. And actually, this is the last in the series, the last in series 31 here. So we won't say that we hope to meet you in our next, for our next team. We'll say we hope to meet you for our next tournament, which is the 2026 World Cup. As I said at the beginning, we'll probably start publishing episodes for that in April of 2026. Hope to see you then. We would like to thank Pixabay and Cold Fingers for the wonderful music used in this mediacast. The title of the piece is Eid Mubarak.